And we are live. Hi, everybody. I'm Angela Fehr, and it looks like I've got this set up and working. So let me know if you can't hear me or if you're having any trouble. And I'm gonna just tweak one setting because I think it's buffering a little bit. So I want to make it work a little more smoothly. And I think we're good. So we are getting rolling here, and as we do so, I want to encourage you to paint along if you want, ask questions. I do save answering questions till the end of the broadcast, and I'm still waiting to see my video come up on the preview, so I'm not sure if it's streaming properly here at this stage. Hoping, oh, sounds like you can hear and see me. Good, because my screen is not showing what it should, so we're just not going to worry about that. And if you're seeing me, then I think we're excellent. Okay, I'm here in my studio today, and I'm really pleased to be able to video from my studio. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and when you're in a rural area, the internet's not always as clear, and additionally, there was just some logistical software issues. I ended up having to buy a new laptop that could handle my video streaming. So it's still a work in progress, and hopefully it all goes smoothly today. I have done some short videos which you can see on my Facebook page, Angela Fehr Artist. I am on a journey to 10,000 followers on my Facebook page, so if you're not following me on Facebook, check out my public profile, and it's a great place to just see what I'm up to every day and be linked up to videos and lessons and all the different content that I offer. We're going to be painting trees in watercolor today, and I love painting trees. Actually, I was telling another student a couple of years ago, I made trees my mission for like a year. I was focused on building skill in painting that particular subject. And I encourage you, if there's an area you feel like you're not very good at, the best way to get good at it is to practice. And so I made trees my mission for that year, and now I love painting trees. It wasn't the only thing I painted that whole year, but it was definitely my focus and emphasis. So, move toward that skill that you want to achieve, and you will see progress happen. And that's what we're going to do today. We're painting winter trees this time, and we've done I did some spring trees last week. And we're going to touch on that briefly because I did have some follow-up questions I wanted to go over. The reason we're painting winter trees, even though it's summer, it's a beautiful hot day here in Dawson Creek. And even though it's summer and we're painting winter trees, because when we strip the leaves away, we get to look at form and we get to practice painting texture and line. And so just because a subject doesn't seem very seasonal doesn't mean you should shy away from painting it. Exploring these different aspects of trees gives us a different skill set, and it helps us build our skills. So we're going to move over to my work surface and start looking start looking at the painting. Michelle's asking, will this video be available later? Yes. If you aren't joining me live, you can watch this video. It's available publicly on YouTube for a week following the broadcast. And then usually the link that you receive in my email newsletter, it still works. Even if the video is no longer public, you can still go back to those old issues of my newsletter to access older lessons. And often, if the content's really great, which most of the time there's stuff that I would love to keep hanging around, and so I'll include it in my online classes at learn.angelafehr.com. And a good example of that is my spring trees, which I painted. I actually linked those up as bonus lessons in my Tree Clinic course. And there's info on how you can access the Tree Clinic in the description below this video. So welcome again, everybody. I'm going to move my screen over to the work surface, and I actually don't even have to move my camera this time. I just get to press a button. It's magical. And it's nice to have a little bit more technological ability to here. I love seeing everybody checking in from all over the world and all the different countries and cities and regions popping up on the chat. Thank you for joining me. I know it's not a convenient time for all of you. And some of you are getting up late, getting up very early, or staying up very late in order to be here. What you're seeing on the paper in front of me here is a little wash that I did actually just on Instagram. It's featuring the two colors I'm going to be mostly working with today. And they are Watercolor Paint by Daniel Smith, Moonglow, and Hematite Burnt Scarlet Genuine. And I kind of stumbled on these as a great option for painting trees. And the reason I love using them for painting winter trees especially is the texture that I get. And I feel like the color's a little washed out. I'm going to see if I can improve that. There we go. Just turned one of my lights off. And on the paper you can see there's all kinds of texture, and then an interesting bright pink over here where I'm getting a bit of a back run. So the color variations that come out of using these two colors in combination are unbelievable. One reason is because Moonglow is actually a mixture of pigments. It includes Viridian, Ultramarine blue, and Anthraquinoid red. And there are pigment numbers on the Daniel Smith tubes so that you can get those pigments or fairly close to them with using different brands. Because there's 3 pigments in there, and ultramarine especially is a granulating pigment, which means it dries in little sedimentary kind of texture on your paper. And so as these 3 colors in this pigment wash across the page, and the more water you use, the more you'll see that separation start to occur as they dry. And here the reds really come out. It's moved. They all move in different ways, and so you get these different effects when you wash them across your paper. The hematite is actually just genuine hematite, and Daniel Smith has several hematite pigments. This particular one, the Hematite Burnt Scarlet Genuine, you get different colors based on how they treat it before they grind it into pigment, I guess. I haven't seen the whole process. I'd love to sit and look on while they make pigment. I think it would be fascinating. What I like about the burnt scarlet is we get this kind of grayish black in this wash. This is very pure hematite right here. And then there's kind of a rusty orange kind of staining color that also comes out as the pigment washes across the paper. So again, lots of texture in both of these two colors. If you don't have these particular colors, do not despair, and I'm going to show you some tree paintings that I've done using different colors so you can get an idea of what's possible and what the options are. Let's see here. Well, first I will share this one, and this is actually using hematite and I believe Sodalite Genuine, and there's some Cobalt Violet that kind of flow through here. And I believe I painted this on one of my previous lessons on YouTube, but I couldn't tell you which one. I love this kind of expressive burst of color here. Another one I want to show you is another winter tree, and this was kind of an accident. What happened here was I was just playing with color, and I was using Cobalt Violet, and I believe that is quinacridone deep gold or quinacridone gold, and then some Sodalite Genuine in the background. And so I was just playing with actually the violet and the gold, and as it moved across the paper, I started seeing a tree, even though the colors I was using are very not colors you would think of for a tree, a yellow tree trunk. But this is just evidence that you don't need to use a very specific color to get an accurate tree. You can build a beautiful tree using some very vibrant or kind of out-of-the-box colors, and it can be a lot of fun to do that. Another one here, and this was a previous YouTube video as well. This one was my playing to learn lesson, and I was using brush show over here, which is our pigment crystals. Over here I was using, what's it called? Aqua bronze, I believe, in a kind of a gold finish. And then I found a tree in this corner, which I painted with Sodalite. And so that mixture of colors, just kind of playing with washes and seeing trees emerge. And I think anytime you spend a year kind of focusing on painting trees better, you start to see trees in a lot of those loose washes, and see ways to bring trees out in front in your painting. Actually two more. This one I'm gonna have to rack my brain to remember what colors I used here. I believe it was yellow ochre and the Mayan blue from Daniel Smith. And then with the red, I think it was, oh, it might have been permanent brown. It might have been, actually it was Piemontite, which is another mineral-based pigment from Daniel Smith. And so I took 3 colors and created this little wash. And again, I saw a tree emerge. And really what happened here was I was using 3 colors that are basically a triad, a reddish color, a bluish color, and a yellowish kind of color, and mixed them together, and you get a real variety when you're using 3 colors in those kind of primary families. And then this one's unfinished. Last night I had a local class here in my studio, and we were focusing on painting trees. And we worked with quite traditional colors based on the beginner palette that I provide to my local students. So we were using an ultramarine blue, a burnt umber, and then a little bit of Payne's gray for our trees. And the ultramarine blue or cobalt blue works as well. Mixed with burnt umber, you get a gray. And as you vary the proportions of pigment, you can get a really brownish gray or a really bluish gray, and it creates some very beautiful neutrals for creating your tree. I love the mood, the feeling in this scene, and I'm looking forward to developing it further. And so yeah, having lots of fun with just trying different colors. And if you can mix up some fun neutrals, and the secret is all of us can mix fun neutrals. If you mix color long enough, it's going to turn into mud, especially if you start adding different colors and tweaking here and there. So we start to get some interesting neutrals that we can use to build the basis of kind of a barren winter tree. So we're going to move right into painting one now. And yesterday I went on Facebook Live, or actually YouTube Live, sorry, and knocking over my microphone, sorry. And on YouTube Live, I actually did my first wash for today's painting. So if you haven't seen that, you can, I will link it up, the first background wash for what we're painting today. And I don't sketch with my pencil. Working like this with a fluid wash is a form of sketching for me. So rather than grabbing a pencil and drawing a bunch of lines, I use a loose wash and to kind of indicate where my colors and shapes are going to go. So I started with some blues for my sky. I started with a little bit of violety color, again the moon glow, which gives a nice violet, and I think the blue was ultramarine. So I used my moon glow, my ultramarine, and my hematite to just wash in the shapes that I wanted in my painting. And so it gives me a framework to follow. It gives you an idea of where I'm going to go with this, because you can see that tree trunk already happening and some tree branches. And that way I don't feel like I'm painting on blank paper, but I don't have pencil lines that I'm locked in to follow. So this is a great way of creating a background. And not only that, but of eliminating the need for sketching in your painting. So I'm going to start painting here. And I think I'm going to start with the hematite because I want to build up some of the browns in my tree before I start adding texture. And again, I'm using my favorite brush, which is the Escoda Versatile number 10 Rigger. And I spend a lot of time painting with the side of this brush. You can see I'm kind of holding it so that the bristles are sliding sideways across the paper. I'm always looking for ways to create a more natural line in my painting. When I'm holding the brush vertically, I'm using it like a pencil. I'm going to get a more mechanical shape. And I want to have something that looks really natural, like nature created it. So that means I want to give over a little bit of control to the brush itself. Now that's a little bit of pure moon glow on my brush already, and that's going to mix with that hematite to create a little bit of texture. This tree has a big bend in it, and I almost think it maybe should start going straight back up there. So we have a little bit of an S curve. What I try to do with the tree is we want to have that rounded feeling of the trunk. So I try to go with one side being a little lighter, or I mean darker, and one side being a little lighter, so you have a shadow. The light doesn't always work so that it's casting a shadow on, the light's coming this way and casting a shadow on this side. Sometimes the light's facing it, and then we have, maybe the front of the tree has a highlight, and the sides of the tree are a little bit more in shadow on both sides. So, but just that feeling of roundedness means that you want to have some variation in value as you move across the tree trunk. And right now I'm just grabbing a little bit of water. And with my wet wash, if I dot in some water there, I'm going to create some blooms, which is going to add further texture. So I've just added really a beautiful layer to that very first soft wash, and it's giving my tree some form. And then from there, I want to right away pull out my branches. And I think I'm going to try the hematite for that as well, in a fairly soft wash to start with, and fairly light. You can see, you can barely see it. And the nice thing is what I did there was created a little path for pigment to follow. So now if I take some moon glow, for example, and dot it in, it's going to follow that moist path that I just created with my paintbrush and start to add some interesting dimension. If I were to just paint one solid line, that can look a little bit boring. So by painting a little path and then dotting in pigment here and there, you get a more interesting and varied line. And I need some paper towel. As my tree trunk has gotten very moist, I also try to not introduce a lot of new water. So when I clean my brush and it's very juicy, I might want to dab it off onto my paper towel, just so it's kind of damp and not too dry or not too wet. If I add a lot of water at this stage, I'm going to get back runs. And I feel like I want some darks on this side of the tree, so I'm going to move in that direction, and I'm going to change the shape a little bit by pulling this branch out in this area. And I'm going to do that with a bit of a broken line, because sometimes broken lines are more interesting than perfectly delineated ones. And if I sound a little bit froggy today, it's because I love trees, but they don't really like me, and I always have a lot of issue with hay fever at this time of year. So I'm a little bit stuffed up. Okay, so here's our tree, and it's looking like quite a young tree. And what I'm loving right now is, even with that, often we think that we need to add texture with dry brush, but this was a wet wash. We started with dry paper, we added some very juicy pigment, dotted in some purer pigment, dotted in some water, and that created a lot of interesting variation of color with our moon glow and our hematite, which tend to granulate anyhow. So it's very textured, even though we haven't really done anything with dry brush. Now I want to move into painting a few of branches. I want to feel like I'm getting more of an idea of the shape of the tree before I develop any other part of my scene further. I mean, I could start thinking about the landscape, and actually I will a tiny bit, because I want this base of the tree to soften a little bit where it meets the grass. So I might just pull out a little bit of grass right now. And I've been thinking a lot lately about hard lines, and I think it might be something that would be good to talk about for a future lesson, why I often paint multiple areas of a painting at the same time rather than separating everything and painting it singly. And yeah, just dealing with edges in watercolor can be a bit of a challenge. And so talking about why I changed my approach over the years would be probably very helpful for you. So we'll consider that for a future class. I've changed brushes, and this is my Cheap Joe's Scroggy's Loose Goose #1 size, and I really like it for painting fine branches. It might actually be too much for these branches coming out from the tree, because this is such a solid branch. You don't want to go with an immediate very fine line. So what you can do instead is just use the side of the brush to kind of create that wider line and then get some finer lines coming off of it. And what I've noticed with trees is when we paint trees, we tend to see this huge mass of branches. That's very terrifying to think about painting every one of those branches. So what I like to do instead is, we paint some of them. And the other thing you want to do is you don't paint all of them in the same value. So they shouldn't all be equally dark. The more distant branches are going to be very pale. Maybe the ones that are kind of sticking, pointing away from the viewer out into the world behind the tree. So I might take a very, very pale wash of kind of shadow color. The same colors I've been using for the rest of the painting, and create some very faint branches that give that sense of distance. And once I've painted those fainter branches, then I might go one step a little bit darker and add a few more strokes that are a little bit darker in value. And this is a really good opportunity to practice your brushwork. One reason I use this Loose Goose Dagger Striper brush is because those long bristles give me a little less control. So again, I'm looking for that opportunity to create those organic lines. And I feel like my tree needs a little bit more branches that are kind of in between super wide and super thin. So it's looking for a place to maybe put one of those. And once I see a place that might work, pulling color out across the paper. And I keep switching back and forth between the hematite and the moon glow to get the color variations that I want. And the more branches I add, the more it gives this kind of feeling of maybe windiness or movement in my scene. One thing that you might find yourself doing is maybe some of these branches don't feel like they belong to this tree. And in that case, you might decide you want to put in some distant trees. And a really pale wash, that's almost too dark even, but a really pale wash of suggesting a trunk, maybe back here, can help with that. And suddenly we have an additional tree that kind of takes care of any branches that kind of don't feel like they belong to the family. And I might then put in, a couple more simple trunk shapes, and that creates a little bit of depth in our scene, as well as kind of resolving an issue with branches that aren't quite going in the right direction. Now, as I've been painting my branches, and I still feel like I'd like to do a little bit more there, maybe some strong dark branches, but I want to wait, because seeing where everything fits together in the painting sometimes takes a little bit of perspective. And so I try not to get really busy painting in one area without pulling back and looking at the way everything fits together. So now I'm going to go back to my trunk and start to add some strong contrast that's going to really make this tree feel weathered and old. And this is where you start using some dry brush, and I'm still using that Loose Goose brush. I like to create maybe a little knot hole, and I keep grabbing my permanent brown instead of the moon glow. They're similar. When they're dry in the palette, they look almost the same. So I'm using straight moon glow here, and parts of this trunk are still a little damp, so that means I'm going to get some crisp lines and some that really bleed, and I like that variety. I might even try to encourage it. If my trunk had dried completely, I would place some line, and then I would go back with a damp brush and soften some of that line as well. And over here it seems like it needs something. And when I talk about placing darks, I don't mean placing blacks. Your color can still be fairly light. You just want it darker in contrast to the rest of the scene. Because black, anything that's so dark as to look black tends to be a little bit boring. You want some rich depths. I noticed in one of my recent paintings that I had these little rings that I was painting kind of around the base of the branch, and I kind of liked it. It looked artistic and yet still like it fit with the tree. So I've been kind of playing with that. And I like that, getting some line in there. Some of it here, it's very damp still, so if I want to put line there, I might have to wait for it to dry just a little bit more. I can add texture in other ways as well. I'm going to spatter a little hematite with my painting toothbrush. And I'm spattering it right up the trunk. And then usually what I try to do is right away go back and take a look at my tree, at my background. And if some of the spatter has kind of gone outside its boundaries, I might soften some of that. Although I like a little bit of overlap. Kind of blends everything together. And that, because that was the hematite, I'm basically spattering tone on tone, so it adds some very subtle texture. And because the tree trunk's still a little dark, the spatter is going to bleed a little bit too when it hits that damp tree trunk. So it's a good moment to evaluate, taking a look at where I'm at in this scene. Truthfully, I'm not loving that big bend in my tree trunk. I think if I were to plan this again, I would probably try to paint my tree a little less dramatically curved. We know that trees do all kinds of crazy things and there's all kinds of weird shapes out there, but sometimes in a painting, you want to do what works for your composition. And again, I just still feel like I want to do a little bit more in my branches. Maybe making some of these big branches just a little bit bolder. Not too bold, but just a little bit more. And trying to, I think, create some more stronger branches in here as well. Too many branches starts to look messy, and we don't want to look messy. So it's trying to find that good balance. And that one's not feeling right. And actually the tree in my title screen for this video was full of mistakes. There was this one area of branches that I just didn't like at all, and I ended up having to kind of do the watercolor artist's version of erasing, which was a variation, a little bit of cropping and a little bit of magic eraser, and then painting back over that with a branch that kind of worked better for the scene. So I don't always get it right the first time. Sometimes you just start over and do it better the second time around. Other times you might want to make what you have work, because it's good for us as a watercolor artist to improvise and to try to look for ways to work with what's happening in our painting and make it beautiful, even when it doesn't go the way we've planned. Adding a little bit of line for grasses, and I'm sticking with my neutral color scheme, the Moon Glow. I could mix a little bit of a yellow into my, what was I thinking of yellow? I could mix it to get add a third color to just get a little bit of a green feeling in there. Maybe going with a little bit of yellow and blue or something, but I kind of like the monochromatic feel when you're working with a very simple color palette. It gives you this very subdued kind of mood most of the time, very calm, and I love the stately feeling and the kind of feeling of aloneness from using such a simple color palette. Okay, I want to move toward answering your questions, so if you want to bring those up now, I'll take a look at the screen in just a moment and try to answer them. I am going to go back to our spring tree lesson from a couple of weeks ago. because I had a student asking about her trees. She was painting a similar forest of spring trees, and she had probably, I don't know, maybe 4 bigger tree trunks in the foreground and then that violet in the background, and it just didn't feel right to her. She wasn't feeling unsettled about it. And I think what she was feeling is a need for further depths. It wasn't just good enough to have front trees and then background, which was kind of that violet color. So what I think works really well, and I should grab a different palette so I have the right colors here. Which is my Cobalt Violet. So what works really well is just to add another layer of depths, and in this case we had our trees. We negative painted around the trees, and that with our violet to make the trees come forward. And so if we want to add a further depths, it's helpful just to grab some more of that Cobalt Violet and to maybe paint around a few more tree trunks. And you're painting, it feels like you're painting tree trunks, but you're actually painting the tree trunks that are behind the other tree trunks, if that makes sense. But by adding a little bit more darker value, it gives that feeling of more in behind. So I'm actually just going a little deeper with in the complexity of the scene. And by just, and it's simple. It's a simple way to do it because you're really just adding more of what you did before, adding some more depth in your values. And that looks quite crisp right now when I've painted all those lines, which kind of are supposed to be in between the tree trunks. So then I might soften an edge here and there, or even lift a little bit of color if it feels too dark. Because you just want kind of a subtle reminder that there's not just trees in front and kind of a faded background in behind, but there's actually trees back there. And if you just stepped into the forest a little more deeply, you'd be able to see them really well. So it's just a matter of adding just a little more. Okay, looking at your questions now. This lesson, I do talk a lot about painting spring trees in my Tree Clinic course, and talking about the colors I've used and different ways to make your trees come to life. I recommend Tree Clinic if you're wanting to build skill in that particular area. Again, it's just breaking down what makes a tree work in painting, and trying different techniques for bringing your trees to have that texture and the color that you want. Louisa asks, Angela, can you do a lesson on skies? And actually, I love that idea, and I've been working on a mini course based on skies. I haven't decided exactly where I'm going to go with that yet, but it is in progress. There's a mosquito in my room that's kind of bothering me. Looking at your questions. We had a question about the magic eraser, which I just touched on briefly for fixing mistakes. Magic eraser is a microfiber scrubber. Joe said it's a slightly abrasive soapy sponge. You do not want to buy the one with soap in it because that does have chemicals that could interfere with your paint or damage your paper. So what I recommend is getting just the original one, which is really just a microfiber abrasive that will kind of polish away the paint without disturbing your paper too much. And I really try not to use it too much for fixing mistakes. I would almost always rather trying to find a way to either catch the mistake before it's had a chance to dry and lift it away. It's much easier to do before it dries. Or find a way to camouflage it or make it not look alone in the painting. Sometimes it's just a matter of adding more of that one thing that's kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. Let's see here. You guys are having issues with refocusing, so I will tweak on that next time. I apologize for that problem. And yeah, my hands just moved too fast. Another comment, Heather says, I've been trying to do a pink sunset. Sunsets will come up on the tree, the sky course as well. I am actually, I'm back again. I'm actually working on 3 courses, if I were to really count them. I have in the works a new free course that I'm excited to be sharing, a watercolor mastery course, which is going to be kind of a big deal. It's going to be a 6-week intensive course, and then the Skies Clinic, which I've been working on when I get the time. So I just need more hours in the day. If you have some spare hours, you can send them to me. Maxine's asked, if we painted with me on this tree, is there a way to upload it to me and the others for viewing? You could do that on my Facebook watercolor workshop group. It's the Angela Fehr Watercolor Workshop on Facebook. I don't critique work there. I save that for my paid online courses at learn.angelafehr.com, where I'll go in and offer coaching and critiques on student work. And further questions, taking a look. I feel like my video is a little bit choppy today, so I'll have to tweak on my setting again. And I will turn my autofocus off for our next lesson, so I apologize that. Aurora Borealis, that's going to be on the Sky course as well, so I can see there's definitely demand for that, and that will motivate me to try to finish the work there. Looking further for questions here. I love seeing how busy and active the chat is during the lesson. I can't really follow along as I'm painting, or I'd be just continually losing my train of thought. But thank you for all your input, and the way you collaborate with each other is pretty awesome. Do take a look at the description under this video. I've referenced some different materials, and you'll see links to those. I've mentioned some courses with lessons that you might find useful as well. The other thing I added is something I'm kind of excited about, and the mosquito is still bothering me. There we go. I got through the lesson without a mosquito bite. The other thing on the description is a link to Danielle Chrissa's Your Inner Critic is a Big Jerk. I gave a review of her book a few weeks ago, and just yesterday I found she has a lesson that she did on creativelive.com. Based on the book and the theme of the book. And so if you have some time, it's a great thing to watch. It's a free lesson, and the link to that is down below as well. If you're feeling discouraged about your progress as an artist, or if you feel like you're too hard on yourself, and most of us are, check out that lesson, and you'll really find it encouraging and motivating for you. Yeah, thank you for joining me. I wish I could paint all your inspiring photos. Angel Help mentions she has some beautiful sunset photos she'd love to see me paint. Every now and then when I'm doing a course, I'm looking for reference material, and I'll put a call out for photos. So if you're on my mailing list, you'll hear about that. And yes, Maxine says, don't forget to thumbs up or thumbs down on the video. Your likes and your subscriptions to my channel do help me get seen more on YouTube, which is really helpful to me as this is the main way that I let people know that what I offer in terms of teaching watercolor and the way I teach, which I think is really important, that if you're looking for an instructor for helping you to move to that next stage in watercolor, we get to audition for you. So if my teaching style, the way I articulate and explain things, if it's connecting with you, I encourage you to check out subscribe to my channel, join me for these weekly lessons, and then also check out my online courses at learn.angelafehr.com. The content there is much more, I find it more structured because I do plan those to follow a certain progression. And then, of course, you do get the student gallery where I get to come alongside you and work with you and coach you through the lessons. So thank you for joining me today, taking time out of your day. Thank you, Joe, for moderating, and we'll see you here next week. I have lots of ideas for next week's lesson, and we'll just have to see kind of what inspires me as I continue working on new courses in my studio and teaching local classes. So come back again next week, and yeah, don't forget to check out the description for all the helpful links that you need. Bye for now.